Hello guys, I hope you're doing good and alright, it's Theo here. Today I want to do a podcast all about realizing that the most important thing with our dyslexia is how we respond to it. And I'm going to draw from what we spoke about yesterday when it comes to ego and kind of saying what is ego and how does it relate to our dyslexia. Now I want to focus on the topic of what to do with our ego. Or how can we manage it, or how can we work towards it, and how can we respond to our dyslexia in a really effective way. Anyway, guys, I hope we enjoy today's episode, and I'll see you all again after the intro bit.
So the big question is this: how can dyslexics like us create a place, a community, a tribe, where people at any stage of life can come and solve any challenge, amplify their strengths, and ultimately help them become who they were meant to be? Or in other words, conquer their dyslexia? That is the question, and this show is the answer. My name's Theo Goff, and welcome to the Conquering Dyslexia podcast.
So guys, how to respond to our dyslexia? And I want to start this episode on with not with a story, but introducing someone. Now, there's this man who wrote a very, very powerful book. This book is called Man's Search for Meaning. I've been thinking for his name for a while, but he's incredibly famous psychologist, therapist, and basically, during World War II, he was in a Nazi camp. I think it was Auschwitz, like a very bad one. You see all his children get murdered, all his family get murdered, his wife, everyone get murdered. And he was there and he was watching the people around him slowly die. And one of the most traumatic experiences that possible to go through as a human being, that's like in our history, would be to go to the camps and experience something like that. But instead of having one of the most traumatic experiences of your life and being absolutely scarred from it the rest of your life and not being able to function with PTSD beyond you could ever imagine, he used it as one of his most. He found meaning in the experience. He found some sort of happiness, some sort of peace in there, because he discovered one thing. He discovered one thing, and he wrote in this book, "The Man's Search for Meaning." Viktor Frankl, that's his name, Viktor Frankl. If you heard of him, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, search him up. It's incredibly powerful. His little book's tiny. If you can read, you can read it within like an afternoon. It takes me a little while to read. I just get the audiobook. But with his story, he used to say that he could tell whether or not a person was going to die within the next 24, 48 hours, or if you're going to live or die. And one day he's like, it doesn't matter how strong you are, it doesn't matter how young you are, it matters one particular thing: the meaning you have of your suffering. Some people would think, okay, this is the end, and if they decide that it's the end, they would have like 48 hours or less than a week to live, because the amount of food they were having is basically nothing. The conditions were absolutely horrific, and the labor they had to do was unimaginable. And so he could tell that there are some people going to die, some people who's going to die. It's all based on there's a switch to go, okay, this is it, we're not getting out of this, then they'll die. But the people who had meanings that what Viktor Frankl had, is they had the meaning of, okay, this is going to be once we get out of here, we're going to tell these stories. This is going to be a lesson. We're going to learn about this. And it would always imagine going home. And the people who had a meaning for their suffering, who had you could say a higher purpose, but had a reason to go through the suffering, to go through all that pain, all that torture, those are the one that survived. You could see in layman's terms, you could see the light at the end of their tunnel. They're the ones that could survive. And when he had this therapy, it's incredible. It's all about finding and power and meaning, the basis of it. I can't really go in detail on the actual therapy, but one thing he said, and it's about responsibility. And now you guys know I love responsibility and being being responsible. Now his definition of the word responsibility, or of basically life in general, this philosophy, and it's in actual sense it's factually correct. In the neuroscience of everything, with everything that happens around us, it's factually correct. And the more we can understand it, the more time we think about it, the more time we look at this and understand this concept. It's very simple, but unbelievably powerful. And this would completely help if you fully use this to transform the way how we look at dyslexia and everything in our lives. And this is what responsibility is, in a sense. And this is like all life is. This is it. It's all life. It is from start to finish. All life is the moment and time between stimulus and response. And that's life. And that's in that time, you have a choice of how you choose to act. And that's life. You have some stimulus, something happens in your environment. Things are happening all the time, but something happens in your environment, something happens at work, something happens at home, something happens at family, something happens with the weather. Like every moment in our life, we have something happening. And that's a stimulus. And then there's this gap. And in this gap, then we choose how to respond. We have two kind of fundamental choices. One, we act spontaneously. We are reactional. We don't think how to react. We just act in the first emotion that happens. We just react to the first thing that comes up. The second thing is that we are conscious in our decision. We are conscious in our decision of how we want to react to things. I.e., okay, this has happened. Like my boss has yelled at me at work. I can either react in an emotional way without thinking about it, just in a reactional way, or think about it. Take time, think about choose how I'm going to respond, and then that's our response. Either response is going to be reactionary or more thoughtful. And that's all of life. If you think about it, that's it. You know what I mean? Like life is massively diverse and all these colours and all these ranges, of course. But in making decisions, in acting, in doing stuff, and that's it. All of life is the gap between stimulus and response. And think about that's really powerful. And think about that, taking responsibility. If we understand that, then, which is true, that's ultimate responsibility. Think about everything that happens to you. When I say happens, everything that happens in the environment around you, every stimulus that you're faced with, you have to choose how you respond to it. And that is responsibility. Responsibility is being able to respond to the situation that you have. Say something happened and then this comes up with all your dyslexic challenges that you have. All problems with reading, problems with writing, people laughing at you, mistakes you made, confusion, time management, becoming really messy, losing things, all these emotional struggles, not believing you can do it, being shy, being awkward, everything everything in the board all comes through stimulus and response, and that's it. Now I'm not saying it's a cure-all, one time you've been shy for 20 years and never been outside, and then you just choose to be outside. No, in a sense, yes, fundamentally it's that simple, but in reality, obviously more complex. But once we can start to understand this truth, we can take small steps. Okay, I have this thing that I've been dealing with 20 years, or I have this thing that I felt crippled me all my life, but ultimately it's about stimulus or response. Ultimately it's okay, right now, the stimulus is I feel like this, I feel these emotions, I have this what we can call a barrier, or we can now call this limitation, but how am I going to choose to respond to it? Am I going to choose to lean forward into action? And there's multiple different ways you can lean forward into action. The simplest, best way to understand things is that if someone's done it in the past, solve something that you're dealing with, then you can do the same thing that they're doing, and do that and do it as well. People with dyslexia struggle with these things, do what they've done, and then, you know what I mean? That's the best first way to start. If you're being overweight, being very, very obese, what's someone else done when they're over obese? What's the first steps they took? Follow that follow that procedure, and then we're working towards it. But it's all about being in control of ourselves, like knowing that we are in control of our responses, we are in control of our brain, we are in control. There's no one like, I forget the name of someone who said it. There's no one that like is like say if you like attach like things to your head, and then like there's people, I don't know the proper name, but they can like fire off a neuron to make you lift your arm, or to make you forget something, or to make you not be able to do something, and they can manipulate the brain in that way. But if no one's doing that, guess what? You have control of this thing. You can fire things off. You can move things. You actually have control of this brain you have inside you. No one's inside your brain doing it for you. You're doing it yourself. And we have become consciously aware of this. Like Tony Robbins says, that like focus is power. Like we have, the first thing we have to take control of is our focus. And the biggest thing we're going to focus on is like how we're going to respond to our environment. How are we going to do that, and do it consciously, do it in a way that we want to act, do it in a way that we want to be like in the future. Like we have a version of who we want to be, because if you want to think about how we want to be, how we want to act, how do we want to treat other people, then act as if we're that person. Let's do it. It's not like, you could say it's like pretend it until you make it, like fake it till you make it, but it's not. If you're acting as if you're this person, then guess what? You're this person, because you're acting that way. And so we're just living like that. And that's what I want to say, guys. When we are dealing with all these challenges that we face, and there are solutions out there. There are very specific solutions. And I know a lot of people here expecting like they give these little solutions. But what's helped me is not having the little solutions. What helped me before finding these little solutions is having the right psychology, the right understandings on how to use this brain. Because most of the time it's using us. The worst thing about dyslexia isn't dyslexia itself, it's our beliefs about our dyslexia and our beliefs about our abilities to be. So guys, sorry about this, the video cut off like just before the end. I had no idea why, but I want us to take that message in with us. It matters how we respond to our dyslexia. It matters how we respond to our environment. And this is the most important part about taking responsibility of dyslexia. Anyway, guys, I hope you learned a lot. Please message me. Have any questions at all? If you have any help, or if you have anything I want to cover on the podcast, I'd be really, really grateful, guys. Anyway, I see you all again soon. Bye, and take care.